Welcome to the Holistic Matters podcast, sponsored by Standard Process. Standard Process is a trusted brand at the forefront of high-quality, whole food-based nutritional supplements. Visit holisticmatters.com for a wide range of holistic health content, including articles, videos, continuing education, and more to keep you up to date on the latest nutrition science and herbal health trends. I'm today's host, Dr. Sarah Clarke, chiropractor, functional medicine practitioner, and Standard Process clinical educator. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm so excited to announce our guest for today's conversation. On this episode, we are speaking with Dr. Kimberly Besuden, who is a chiropractor, business owner, and functional medicine practitioner who works and resides in Florida. In her free time, she enjoys cycling as well as competing in the sport. Because she's so humble about her accomplishments, I have to brag on her a little bit here. She's won countless national championship titles and most recently the Pan American Games. So we are so lucky to get to speak with her today and take a deep dive into her strategies for optimal aging and how she leverages nutrition and fitness for both herself and her patients. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Besuden.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to just start by getting a little bit more information about your background, just so our listeners can hear what inspired you to get into the health field, and just curious on really what brought you into the health and wellness space. And was there a person or event or anything that started this passion, or where did that passion come from to become a leader?
I think it's just always been there. I don't know if you're born that way or that's the easiest way to say it. Sometimes I'm at a very early age. I kind of knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what I wanted to be a doctor. And then it was just trying to figure out what kind of doctor I wanted to be, and settled on chiropractic because when I would compete, I'd go to all these competitions and there would be a medical doctor and then there'd be a chiropractor. And the medical doctor is just sitting there. The chiropractor was busy. And I was like, what is that? And then having grown up with chiropractic care, it also helps. I mean, I learned that if you're born at optimal performance, we would get adjusted prior to competition. So that was kind of my insight into it. And then, when I got out of college the first time or the second time, how many times I've gone now, I decided to really, go down that pathway. And, I did start later in life. I didn't go back to school till I was was just past 30, actually 32, when I started chiropractic school. So when I finished, I wanted to be ready to go, and I just put all my effort into that at school. And then as an athlete, we powerlifted and bodybuild, and now I do cycling. So chiropractic has always been that step in there. And then nutrition came along with that, having a background in exercise physiology and having a background in having to be a powerlifter and bodybuilder and have weight classes and that kind of stuff. I really learned about nutrition to really maximize my performance.
Amazing. So you learned firsthand kind of the power of chiropractic and how nutrition just influences everything in our life probably, but you got firsthand experience, which is perfect. So how did functional medicine fit in?
Well, let's see. In about 2003, 2004, I was walking around the FCA, our Florida Chiropractic Association, and I had this whole year of patients coming in saying, hey, you know what? I just went to my MD or my PCP and my blood work was normal. They said it was all normal, but I still feel like crap. What's wrong with me? And I feel toxic. So I went around the convention just kind of on that, intermission of what does it mean by being toxic and how can I help a patient? So I explored all the different options, went to all the different companies that supplied information and settled on one with a program that lasted 21 days. I really liked that, but I tried it with myself and my staff, and it was a big success. And then so we introduced it with patients in 2005, and then we've been doing that ever since. And then from that, just became, kind of the community leader in detoxification and purification, and patients kind of were drawn to that. They bring their friends, their neighbors, their spouses, and that just started that whole. And then, well, I've had this, but now what about my digestion? What about this? And help with this. And it just kind of I think organically, no pun intended, but kind of organically grew from that.
Wonderful. All of a sudden, when you see you can start helping people with one thing, they come back for all the other things. And we know a functional medicine approach looks at all the body systems. So makes sense that everyone wants to get those benefits. And with patients that are in your office, is there a most common demographic that you see? I know you said it sounds like you have a lot of referrals from different people, but is there a common thread or common age range, or who's typically coming in?
I'm in a very, let's say, dynamic area. So I, just south of the villages, which is notorious for the village people. And so that's an older population. And then I have a lot of athletes. I cycle with a lot of the local athletes. So that comes into play. Then I travel nationally and I have athletes that we chat with, and then they reach out as well. So that's a kind of a draw for people to hear about nutrition and at the level that I take it to. But I have it from diapers to tinctures, really, in my practice.
I love that. That is a great way to describe it. And just curious, with the older population that you're seeing, are a lot of them active, or are they coming in with kind of no activity right now and you're getting them into activity? Or I guess, what does that look like for a lot of the older population?
Well, it's really nice in Florida because we can do something outside just about every day. So we have a huge variety of activities people can do, and that's why a lot of people retire in this area, and just gives the opportunity to golf, and pickleball is very, very popular down here, and playing tennis and all these activities we can do outside. I find that the general population is more active because of that. I don't know if it's just the weather, but I think aging now is a big draw for patients to do better, or people to do in general better for their health. They were living longer and want to live well. I always tell patients I don't want to see them, sitting in their wheelchair drooling on themselves. I'd rather see them being, 90 or 100 years old out doing stuff. And I compete in nationals that are the senior nationals. So I see, there's a cyclist that's she's 82. She's a retired OBGYN. And this woman's fast. I mean, I fast. She's pretty darn fast, for 82. And, I talked to her at my last competition. It was at the Pan Am Games. And she said, I said, hey, I said, it's so cool that you're doing this. She goes, well, I just want women to know that when they become 80, they don't have to be sitting in a rocking chair. They can do stuff and you can be healthy and you can be viable people and still, she still contributes to her, OBGYN community as a, not an influencer, but more as a mentor. And I think that's really the kind of the key there is that as we age, and I find that for myself, and that's why I kind of delve into the aging, is because it's just really, it's what was happening to me right now. And how can I optimize that? Just like in athletics, we look at peak performance, but peak performance is only for one time. So it's like anti-aging. You really can't anti-age because we're always be aging. And for me, it's, frustrating now. I know everybody feels that way as they get older when they go to put their birth date into a computer generated something, and you put it and you feel like it's Wheel of Fortune as you scroll down to the year you were born. Yeah. Well, we all have that. We're always going to have that. So I think aging really has come into play at this point. And that's really what I've really focused on with patients, even patients that are younger. They're like, well, how can I live well, be well, and move well as I age? What does that look like? What can I do to support, either food-wise, nutrition-wise, supplementation-wise, exercise-wise?
Absolutely. I think everyone listening, myself included, wants to be that 82-year-old, still cycling, still active. Not sure if we'll get to that national competition level at 82, but hey, the sky's the limit. So we'll see there. But curious on, say you are having patients and they're active, maybe they're walking, they're playing pickleball. Are there other types of exercise that you find beneficial for people who are aging? Maybe they want to be more fit, they want to optimize their exercise endurance, but where would you start with that type of patient?
Definitely starting them with doing strength training. Strength training doesn't mean they have to be a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, but it does mean that strength is probably the key for optimal aging. Lessen the risk of fall and fracture, or fracture and fall, increasing cardiovascular strength as well, but just really having the strong bones, the strong muscles, and that is really what helps us. It also helps when we exercise, especially with strength, muscles work, we release myokines, and those myokines do a variety of things. Number one, they make our bones stronger. Number two, they make our brain better by producing BDNF, so we have better memory and better learning. It decreases tumors in the colon, decreases breast cancer. All these things happen in our pancreas and our digestive system. It reduces, the improves beta oxidation and antioxidation, but it also helps to increase GLP-1. And, we hear GLP-1 all the time now for people trying to lose weight. Well, our body will naturally do that for us in a better aspect if we just do some strength training.
Wonderful. I think that's so important, and just for people to hear and to hear for their patients how just muscle is so protective during aging. And like you talked about, all of those different effects that just simple strength training can have on the body is absolutely incredible. So I love that. And is it something where once they get into a strength training routine, you'll bring in some aerobic exercise or some cardio, or have you found that people in Florida or maybe your patient population naturally just is staying active in that way?
A variety of ways. So I always, when I do a functional medicine appointment with a patient, we always do a body composition. I use scale that measures their body fat, their muscle, their bone, their water. So we have a really good idea where they are, their visceral fat. So we know where we're starting from. I always give them some type of a weight training program. And I mean, you can go to the local gyms, and especially patients as they age and they're on these Medicare Advantage plans, they have silver sneakers, which afford you a free membership in the gym. Now, personally, I thought they were doing that for my benefit since I turned 65. But then I find out, no, they're doing that because they know that person that works out is going to be a less, cost disadvantage to the system. So I start out, and I would always just, even patients that have never done anything, there are just 5 simple strength things that people can do. Number 1, the dead bug laying on the floor. You can go on YouTube and look up what the dead bug is. Number 2, some kind of plank, and you can modify that plank so you can do that. Some type of squat. It doesn't have to be, it can be an air squat to start with, but all squatting is really important for patients as they age, getting up out of a chair. And you can kind of test yourself, how many, squats can you do in 30 seconds? And that kind of measures what kind of fitness level you are. So the higher number, the better the fitness, the lower the number, you've got to do some work. Another thing would be the glute bridges, where you lay on the floor with your hips and lifting your hips. You don't have to do it with weight to start with. And then probably lastly, just a push-up. And those are things that people don't need any equipment for, just starting with those things. And it's just finding the button in that patient to turn on to do those things. And I will say that out of all of that, the biggest and the bonus of all that is really consistency. If that patient is consistent with those, they're going to have success, and they're going to be able to add other things. And when they get tired of doing those things, or they feel they're not tired of they're fit enough, they want to move on, then we can take them to the next level.
Wonderful. That was so helpful. Thanks for sharing all those. And I find it so interesting too that it's no equipment, because I think that that's something that can be an obstacle for people. They might be hesitant or afraid to get equipment. Maybe they feel like they don't know how to use it, or it might just sit there. But when you say, hey, all you need is your body and you can just get started today, I think that takes away maybe some of that fear or just that obstacle there. And in terms of consistency, that's something that I think we hear a lot about. People find it hard to maintain something, but any little tips or advice or things that have worked with your patients in terms of just getting in that routine of the strength training that you think could help other people?
I recommend at least 30 minutes a day. Do something every day. You sit looking at your phone more than you do anything. So pull up an exercise on there. There's all kind of, any gym that I'm a member of now. I have several gym memberships because I travel, and my fitness is important to me. So I'm on the road a lot teaching. So I always find a place to do my activity if the gym at the hotel is not adequate. And there are apps that you can do that. YouTube is a wealth of information. That's a really key thing. And about, working on 150 minutes per week. And so if you break that up, that's about 20 minutes a day. In my own workout, which is, I like high intensity workouts, because my goal always with patients when they're trying to do strength training, it's 8 to 10 repetitions, 3 to 4 sets, 4 exercises per body part. And my workout is a 4-day workout. I do arms one day, legs one day, chest one day, back one day, 4 exercises of each. And I do superset them. So I do one set for 4, rest and do some abs and repeat. Each time I repeat, I bring the weight up a little bit. So that last set, that maybe the 7th and 8th rep, you may not be able to get, and that's okay. And it's different in your patients. What I see patients doing they're doing 25 and 30 repetitions of something. Well, that's fine, but that's, after 30 reps, you're really just toning. You're not really building. So, increase the weight a little bit, drop the repetitions down for really maximum work. And that's the whole idea of weight training, is to be able to be time efficient. If you do calisthenics, like say a jumping jack, you do 10 jumping jacks the first day. Well, by the end of the week, 10 is going to be easy. So you have to load more, and then 25. And then the next week it's 50, and then 75. And by the end of the year, you're doing 1,000 jumping jacks a day. And that's very timely. With the weight training, as the weight gets easier, the exercise gets easy, you just add a little bit of weight to it. So more time efficient.
Perfect. Thank you for giving such pointed information. I think that's something that a lot of healthcare practitioners could take and adapt for their patients.
And the practitioners themselves too.
Absolutely.
I coach docs, and that's the one thing got to practice what you preach.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, especially in patient care, a lot of that burnout can come from people not taking care of themselves or putting themselves maybe after their patients, for example. So that's really key in order to be able to continue helping others, is got to make sure that you're staying in top shape, which you obviously do. Another question that I'd love to get your opinion on is talking about hormesis and its role in optimal aging. And I know that that's kind of in the media, in the buzz, and just talking about different theories of hormesis and how to optimize our biology as we age. But are there any activities that you personally like to improve hormesis? Or I guess, what's your interpretation of hormesis, and how do you best improve it in your patients?
So my definition of a hormesis from the athletic standpoint, in our athletic world, we say, whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Keeping hormetic activities in your world, and especially for optimal aging, number one would be intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting stresses the body when you're not eating. But during that non-eating time, your body also then starts into autophagy, which is cellular cleanup. And that happens at night when we sleep. And then it also maximizes our body's utilization of amino acids to rebuild muscle. The other thing would be a cold plunge. Now, we don't have a cold plunge here, and I travel a lot, so I always do a cold shower, a hot shower, and then finish with an ice cold shower, making sure you get that cold water on the back of your neck and on the back of your upper back, and then turn around and get your whole face, your head, your whole body, so you start getting some goosebumps. Getting that chill like that stresses the body, and the body has to then become warmer. And when that happens, that's what causes what we call the beiging of brown fat. So we have brown fat when we're born on the back of our neck and across our shoulders. And when we age, that kind of goes away. But as babies, that protects our neural tube as we're developing. So we still have that available. And that then becomes better at being more thermodynamic and helps to burn body fat at a better rate. The bad body fat, not bad, but the white body fat, which it's like, Crisco in a can, I guess, is what I think of white body fat as. Brown fat is just more dynamic and creates, better thermogenic response to the body. Another thing would be high intensity training programs with both strength training, and I didn't really talk about cardiovascular, but the same thing with cardiovascular. It's our heart is a muscle. We can't hand it a dumbbell. So we do strength training, and there you do get some components of strength training. Like if you're doing a push-up or you're doing a squat, you do get a cardiovascular benefit from that. But doing a high intensity walk or a jog, or for instance, on the bike, when I'm training on the bike, I did an hour today. I'm getting ready for a race next weekend. So it was a high intensity. It was a little longer than normal. They had a 30-second high intensity at my FTP, which is my maximum I could do, and then a minute and a half recovery. And then I repeated that 3 times. And then I did 6 minutes maximum and 6 minutes recovery. So getting your heart rate up is what stresses the body to get it stronger. If we do the same thing all the time, we're not stressing the body. And I always kind of explain to my docs when I'm teaching that your maximum heart rate at birth is 220. And as we age, we subtract a year. So however old you are, for instance, I'm 66. So my maximum heart rate is 220 minus 66, and that gives me 154. And that's my maximum, my new maximum heart rate. Now, maximum heart rate doesn't mean you can't exceed that. That's like on your car where you look at your speedometer and it goes to that. Now, you're not going to go there very often. And if you do go there, you're not going to stay there very long because you're going to get in trouble. Same thing when we stress our heart, but that's what makes the heart stronger. And that those pressure points where you're pushing up high and then recovering, then get the heart stronger because it gets stressed, and that's what makes it stronger. So those are really three things I work with patients on how hormetically they can do that. Now, I also do supplementation that's whole food based. And the supplementation that I use is grown on a farm that is organic. And that same principle of hormesis happens there as well. When that soil when they're planted in the soil and the soil is organic, that's wonderful for the plant. But it's the weather or the too much rain or not enough rain stresses the plant. That stress then helps to strengthen the plant. Then as consumers of that plant in the supplementation, we get the benefit of that. So whatever doesn't kill that plant makes it stronger. And then hormetically, it's an advantage to us. Microbiome wise, it's also an advantage to us. So it strengthens the microbiome of the plant. And then we can benefit from our own microbiome from that plant's microbiome.
Amazing. I love how you're tying in the nutrition with the exercise and optimal aging all together. I think that's such a nice way to influence both the practitioners, the way they practice, and then also just helping patients, because it really does take that whole rounded approach to help people change their life, change their biology. So that's really helpful. I know one question that we get a lot is just in terms of getting into the routine of starting intermittent fasting, people wondering like what's going to break the fast? Like, will coffee break the fast? Or can I have a water? What does that look like? Or could I have a healthy fat or put MCT oil in my coffee? Or what does that look like? So any just helpful tips on helping someone elongate that time period to help them just get that window a little bit longer?
I always have patients start with easy 10-14, so 14-hour fast with a 10-hour feed. And I always tell them that it doesn't mean a feed for 10 hours. And I usually kind of encourage patients to do a 2-meal a day and then have some type of protein snack in between. And then I just move them. I find that a 16-hour fast and 8-hour feed is pretty reasonable for people. For instance, I call it the Besuden confusion principle, meaning I don't do two things the same every day. So Monday, Wednesday, I don't go in to see patients till noon. So I do 16-8. So we stop eating at 6:30. I do go to bed early and I do get up early. My mother says I kick the roosters to wake them up. It's probably true. And so I like to eat early so I have enough time to digest food before I go to bed. So I eat last meals at 6:30 and then I don't eat again until the next day at 10:30. Now, as far as how do I break that fast, I don't do any supplementation until I break my fast. But for me, because I am at my ideal body weight, I do a fat fast, meaning I have my coffee in the morning. I use an organic whipping cream. Some people do a bulletproof coffee. Water will not break your fast. Coffee, if you don't put anything in it, will not break your fast. But once you put a fat in there, it's fat fasting, but your body, it's a slower process than, if you throw a carb in there. A carb's going to shoot your metabolism up pretty quick to manage that. So your fat is better. And I think the 16-8 and the 18-6 are pretty easy to follow. But there's, you can do, fast, the FMD, the fast mimicking diet, where you don't, you can still eat, but you restrict your calories, and then you do a day or so where you don't eat anything and you just drink water. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's a warrior fast where you only have 1 meal a day. I don't particularly like that. I think the 16-8 works best, that 2 hour. It's easy for compliancy. In my world, simple means compliant. And if I can tell them you can eat twice a day, 2 big meals a day, and I encourage patients to eat the majority of their protein in the morning. And we should talk about protein too, as far as optimal aging. And then they can have like a protein shake midday or some type of protein snack, and then have their dinner at night. And that should give them enough calories if they're eating enough good healthy fat. And I do promote a low carb healthy fat diet. In my patient world, that doctors get upset with what I say and they think it's keto. We call it a modified Mediterranean diet because everybody knows Mediterranean diet is supposedly good. So we just modified it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for diving a little bit deeper into that. And I think that can be really helpful just again for guiding practitioners. One question I do have is for the athletes, say they're coming to see you, they're already kind of in their routine of their nutrition, their training, but they still want to get better. They want to optimize. Would this intermittent fasting still be a good fit for them? Or is that something that's going to be modified if they are in high intensity training?
It'll just depend on the athlete and what level they're at and what their sport is. For me as a cyclist, which is my primary, but I still do strength training. I still do it. I do it well. I pretty much do it every day just because it fits into my routine. And on Fridays is typically I do a 20-hour fast with a 4-hour feed just because it works that one day. I mean, I make that work. And if I don't fast, it's not a big deal, but I do feel better because we just eat too much food. So if I'm eating foods that are nutrition rich and fiber dense, then I'm going to get high quality food. And I don't need a lot of it because I'm getting all the nutrition I need out of it. If somebody's eating a lot of, white flour, white sugar, they're taking in calories, but they're empty calories. And your body's going to keep asking, hey, you didn't feed me. I need more. And our silly brain thinks, oh, I should have another candy bar or whatever. And their body's really saying, hey, no, I need food that's nutrition rich and fiber dense. You're not giving it to me, so I'm still hungry. And our silly brains interpret it as you need another candy bar.
Exactly. Oh, well, it's amazing too with your busy schedule and your traveling that you can still maintain that great nutrition and get those nutrient dense foods. Anything that comes to mind just to help you keep on that schedule? Or is it basically just you doing your best to find the foods while you're on the road? I know a lot of both practitioners travel and they have patients that travel. And it's just a common question that I've seen come up is just how do people stay on track with that busy schedule and when things are maybe out of their control nutrition wise?
And I travel, I just looked at my schedule. I traveled 27 weekends out of the year last year. So I'm on the road a lot and then be able to maintain that. So I find it very easy. I do things like I get their meat sticks that are organic, grass-fed, that are, easy to carry with me. So I always have a bag of those. I can always find eggs. I can always find this. It may not be the quality that I'm used to, but it's still a better choice than, going someplace that's not going to be healthy. I always travel with my blender bottle and protein powder. I'm a big protein powder fan. I do both. I do a combination of a whey protein powder and a vegetable protein powder or plant-based protein powder so that I get the best of both worlds and I can pack 30 grams of protein in a shake. And so I travel with the dry powder. Whenever I get to the hotel, I go down. There's always some kind of coffee place that begins with an S, and I can always get almond milk there. Or, there's always the markets that are around that I can get, sometimes I always get my organic whipping cream for the room when I can make my coffee, and I get almond milk so I can make my shake. And and then I can go out to dinner and I can really, I can just get, whatever protein that I'm going to do in vegetables, and I don't have to do dessert.
We'd like to take a quick moment to mention our sponsor, Standard Process. Standard Process is a family-owned and practitioner-focused company that makes high-quality, whole food-based supplements. Through their dedication to quality and innovation, they are committed to transforming health with innovative products. Because plants can only be as healthy as the ground they are grown in, Standard Process is committed to sustainable and regenerative farming, improving the health of the soil season over season. They grow 20 to 30 unique crops each year, generating over 7 million pounds of produce, including buckwheat, Swiss chard, and Spanish black radish. As a result, you can trust that the ingredients in their supplements will never contain GMOs or be subjected to synthetic pesticides. To ensure freshness and limit nutrient degradation, innovative processing techniques are used to preserve potency and nutrient density. To learn more about Standard Process, visit standardprocess.com/only@sp.
Perfect. Wonderful. And wanted to just check on saunas versus cryotherapy. I know you mentioned you love cryotherapy, mentioned the cold shower. I think that's an amazing hack just for people who do not have a cold plunge available to them. What are your thoughts on saunas? I know Florida's really hot. Is that something that maybe makes people not want a sauna, or just curious?
Florida is a sauna.
Just go outside.
If you want to have a bad hair day, just come to Florida.
Right.
If you have curls, you won't have them.
Absolutely.
Well, so yeah, no, sauna is a big, I mean, if I could have an infrared sauna in my house, I would. I just am only allowed to have so many toys, and yeah, I'm just running out of room. We got to have a place to live too. So I would have, I can't think what else I would have, but I would have a lot of things. But infrared sauna, yeah, I would do that. I mean, even if just a regular hot sauna, I mean, definitely a benefit. I use hot tub just because I keep it really hot. I get in there, 5-10 minutes in the morning, every morning, just to kind of stretch before I do my workout for the day. Just kind of brings on the heat of the body. I think it's a great way to, cleanse, just prepare. Also, I remember training for a triathlon, and we would put the stationary bike in the sauna and train to simulate that.
Wow. Awesome. These are great nuggets for anyone who's training or has patients that are training. That's a great idea, something I haven't thought of, and awesome that it still works too. So
yes. And those infrared saunas, I mean, you can get smaller ones that are like a tent version that actually fit in the corner of the room.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of things that I don't utilize, but I mean, it's not that I don't. I just haven't gotten it introduced it into my household yet.
Makes sense. So you mentioned the modified keto diet, modified Mediterranean diet, you call it. Is there anything else that you've seen really well work with just a dietary framework for patients? I know everyone is so specific. Most things are personalized to patients, so it's kind of a loaded question, but I'm just so interested in that modified Mediterranean framework. So anything that you want to share?
We take patients that we call it a low carb, healthy fat diet, and with moderate protein. So I'm a big one on personalized, nutrition, and because what works for me won't work for you. We look at their ideal body weight. If there's a weight management issue, that's how we can target things. I generally keep their carbs under 100. I like that 50 to 75 range, which is kind of what I do. And once again, I bring in that Besuden confusion principle. I don't do the same number of grams of carbohydrates every day. One day I do 50, one day I do 75, and I just change it up. As far as protein, pretty key. Whatever their ideal body weight is at least half that. So my ideal body weight is 130 pounds, and so I get about a minimum of 65 grams of protein. Now that means that's my minimum. So on the days that I'm a strength training, like today I did a weight training workout, and I did a really high intensity cycling workout, I will do up to 130 grams of protein today. And then as far as fat, I do my body weight in grams of fat, and I'm talking healthy fat. And that can be confusing to people, but I'm talking about real butter from grass-fed cows, ghee. I'm talking about organic coconut oil. I'm talking about avocado oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, and incorporating all those in there. And remembering that, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So when I do 130 grams, that's 1,300 calories. So I'm predominantly getting my fuel from my fat, which is a longer, better burning source of fuel. Carbohydrates are great, but when you shoot the carbohydrates up and then you drop, say somebody does, like I have athletes that are more and more becoming type 1 pre-diabetic because of all the goos and the gels and things they're eating. So you take one of those, and it throws your blood sugar up, but then the blood sugar crashes and the body can't go to burn fat. So it will burn the next easiest thing to burn, which is going to be muscle for fuel. So our body then begins sarcopenia on my athletes, which is something that happens as we age. And we're inducing it because we're doing too high carbohydrate, and the body then is going to hold on to fat because it can't burn it. So once I put a patient on that kind of a program, it usually takes about 2 weeks to become fat adapted, 2 to 4 weeks, I'll say, depending on the level of patient. And it's easy for them to follow because the food that has the good fats in it is very satiating. So I find really, really easy compliance with that. And it's easy for them to be consistent, which those two are the keys for their success.
Amazing. And that is interesting that you said that about the goos for a lot of athletes, because something that I've been seeing a lot of is athletes sharing their game day meals or like pre-game meals. And I was floored at what it looked like just in terms of fast food and things that were really unhealthy, high sugar, carb heavy. And so I was just curious if that's something that you've kind of seen in the racing community. Maybe the racing or cycling community is a little bit better about it, but I was just floored when I saw some of that just pop up on social media. So I was curious if you've seen it as well.
Oh yeah. Well, so you have to understand there's one level when you get to, there's a level of performance that when you have a good performance, you're going to repeat everything you did before that performance. So some of these athletes that had this really outstanding performance may have eaten crappy food the day before, but mentally they're thinking that food is responsible for that good performance. So they're just going to repeat that the next time. So they can do that for years before they realize it's them that's creating the good performance. So those are just kind of junk habits. And I just, try to really teach, athletes myself. Now I won't do a goo or a gel unless, and I'm, like I said, I do protein, actually doing a carnivore. This is my 2 months now that I've done a carnivore diet. So I'm not doing any carbs other than Thanksgiving Day. I did do a little, and that's the only way but still we had roasted Brussels sprouts. I had vegetables and mashed cauliflower and green beans. So my fuel comes from fat, and I can hold 20,000 to 40,000 calories of fat for fuel and won't run out. I won't bonk. None of that happens. A carbohydrate, you only have 2,000 to 4,000 grams of calories for storage. So if I'm going to do a 5K time trial, that is a get up, go, tongue hanging out, pedal to the metal, everything you've got for that 5K. And so at an average speed of anywhere from 25 to 26 to 27 miles per hour, you're just loading out. I will do a goo right before I do a gel 15 minutes before I start, because I'm going to use that right in the beginning just for a little. But if I'm doing a 10K, I don't do it. If I'm doing a 20K, I absolutely don't do it. That's the only time I'll get a really good kick from that, but it's just for the 5K.
Interesting. So have you tried it, basically doing it for a longer race, and you felt that dip or you felt like a little bit of that crash?
No, I don't. I know better.
Okay, good. Well, that's perfect.
I've been adapted this way for probably since 2017. Very easy to maintain. And like I said, I just don't bonk. And, I just, like I said, I always have fuel available. You remember when you're burning carbohydrates and you run out, you just can't switch over to burning fat. It's like your car. If you run out of gas, you can't start using diesel for your fuel. Two different mechanisms. Once you become fat adapted, then you have fat as a resource. When you eat enough good fat, then your body is given the permission to burn it as fuel. If you're on a fat restricted diet, then you eat fat and your body's like, well, you're not eating enough, so I'm not going to get rid of anything because I need it for my brain, I need it for my organs. And we become at a deficit. So we then start holding on to fat. So your patients that are not losing fat like they want to, and once again, you have to do a body composition to be able to chart that. This is the key. And that's really important for my whole performance. The scale that I use is very detailed, and can I say the scale that I use? I use an InBody 570, and it measures visceral fat, and it's really good at just giving a good body composition where your muscle is on your legs, your arms, your trunk, and where the fat is. So for me, I've always just I'm at monthly, maybe every other month, I just kind of check. I change it when I'm changing foods. I just see how it affects my body, what it does to my body fat, what it does to my muscle. I can just tell you, just because I just did it the other day from the carnivore, we started October 1st. So I've been able to maintain and actually put on a pound of muscle. So for me, it's really important as I age. It's harder as we age to maintain muscle without losing it. So I was able to add a pound of muscle and then decrease body fat. So my body weight stayed about the same, but I just seeing the shift in the dynamics of that. So also important for anybody that's doing any kind of nutrition, you've got to do body composition. The patient has to know where they're starting from. You can't get to where you want to go unless you know where you're starting from.
That's so important. And I think it helps probably for compliance too. If people can actually see that quantitative measurement, then they know, okay, I have this goal that I'm searching for, or something that's a little bit more tangible, and they see it on a piece of paper. So that's perfect. And I'm curious, you have touched on a few of these already, but do you have any specific like power foods or superfoods that you feel like you bring in that really power up your training? I know we've talked a lot about the healthy fat, but are there any specifically that you like?
Definitely protein. I do a lot of, like I said, I do a whey protein powder with a plant-based protein shake and some almond milk. And I've done shakes my whole life. So I don't do anything fancy. I put it in a blender bottle, shake and go. So anywhere from 30 to 40 grams, I'll get a protein in that shake. And, when we talked about optimal aging, I think that's the other thing that I see patients just don't get enough protein. And I do a food log for patients. I don't do that. They do it. And I have them bring their food log in so that I can see what they eat. And they're clearly not eating enough. They're starting the day with too many carbohydrates. So they're loading their body in the morning with sugar and can't understand why they don't have success the rest of the day, because they just crash the rest of the day, or their body's burning muscle instead of, maintaining muscle, is they're not getting enough protein. And for protein metabolism or for protein synthesis to even start, you want to have your window of eating protein is like after you work out is 30 minutes to 2 hours. And getting a minimum of 30 to 40 grams for that first meal after your workout is very key. It can be plant-based, it can be animal-based, however you do it. So for me, this morning I had eggs with a little bit of organic cheddar cheese, and I had some leftover ham from Thanksgiving. So I made it just an omelet. So that was probably 40 grams of protein right there. And that's key. Then from that, I can build on that. So since I did the heavy workout, I'll add 65 grams of that. The rest of my day will be that. So then I can do it in the form of a protein shake, which would give me a good 30 to 40 grams. And then, when I give patients those quantitative numbers to use, I do give them a protein sheet so they can calculate. Like a piece of chicken the size of their palm is about 25 grams. So that way they're out eating and they're not going to measure everything. But I tell you, pre-measure, we're not very diverse in the foods we eat. So just measure the foods that you eat. Then when you go out, you know what it looks like.
That's great advice. That's a wonderful way to just be prepared so they have an idea of what that looks like. I know you mentioned for yourself, you'd like to do the InBody every month. Is there a certain timeline that you like to check in with patients when revisiting their body comp?
We usually do, depending on the need of the patient. If they're on a weight management program where they want to lose fat, I don't want them to lose weight. I just want them to lose fat because I want to maintain muscle. And with the InBody, I can check that. So we do that monthly with them. Not any sooner than that, because it doesn't really, and I do the whole scan because it doesn't really give enough. If you try to do it every week, you're going to fluctuate enough. So I find doing it at the same time of the day, and monthly is fine. But the key with the InBody and why I like it, now it's a $10,000 scale. It's not like everybody's going to go out and buy one, but they're available in the community. I tell my docs I work with to just check in their community and create a relationship, a partnership with somebody to send your patients there. Mm-hmm. The key with that is it does show where the body fat is and where the muscle is. So and the visceral fat, which is, we know they're deadly fat. That's the fat we're worried about for our health. So I can show them the levels of, where the fat came off. So a patient, especially my challenge losers, which are usually my female patients, if they didn't lose a lot of weight, I can show them your weight may have stayed the same, but you put on muscle, and here's where you lost the fat, and your visceral fat went down. So that really helps keep patients compliant and not, if they only lost a pound, but you show they put on a pound of muscle and lost 2 pounds of fat, we can show the difference in that. And that helps them be more consistent because they had some success, and more compliant. My 2 key words, consistency and compliancy.
That's amazing. And I think celebrating those small wins are so important, and seeing that all the effort that they're doing, it's working, and just helps get on that positive train of momentum. So wonderful. Any other biomarkers or metrics that you like to pay attention to, or even any other devices like an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring or anything else that you personally like or have seen success with your patients?
Well, I am currently on Gen 4 of the Oura Ring because I've had all generations of them, because I scratch them and have to get a new one because I like them to be nice and neat. So I love using an Oura Ring. My patients that are virtual in my virtual community, I have them using an Oura Ring. It's easy for me to compound data. For me as an athlete, I use the HRV component of it for the heart rate variability for recovery. Like, this is my last heavy workout and my HRV is really low right now. I don't race till next Sunday. So I taper and rest and recover. I don't go to the gym. I may get on the bike and just spin the pedals. I don't, won't do anything hard, just enough to get my heart rate up, like a zone 1, zone 2. That's probably the biggest thing I like about but I also the temperature, you can see your body temperature, so you know immediately if you're getting sick. And I like something like that device or a Wolf bracelet, different than an Apple Watch, because if most people are charging their Apple Watch at night, so they're not getting their sleep dynamics, which is another thing that I like to look at for patients. That sleep pattern is important. If they're not getting into deep sleep and getting REM sleep, then they're not getting recovery either. And it measures, their heart rate, measures their pulse oximeter, so we know what their oxygen levels are at night if they're having trouble sleeping. We know what their respiration is, and then it also tracks their movement. So when they send me their report and I see that there's not that many steps in a day, I can say, oh, why aren't there more steps? So it's good for patients, and you can set notifications on it. I think it's good for patients to be reminded. The Apple Watch does that too. Samsung Watch, all those devices are really, really, I think, important tools for people to use these days.
It's great to have those reminders. All of a sudden you're like, whoa, I didn't know I was sitting for this long. Time to get up and move and make sure you hit your goal. So that's wonderful.
I would say biomarkers, or just like I'd say every 6 months, especially as we age, to get blood work. And, using a panel that you get a complete metabolic panel, a complete CBC. I want to know CRP, C-reactive protein, to know if there's any inflammation or a risk for heart attack or stroke. I want to look at A1C. I want to look at their glucose. I want to look at their vitamin D. I mean, I live in Florida, and 99% of my patients, when I start with them, are vitamin D deficient. I mean, they're not even in range. They're the range is like 30 to 100. Optimal would be 50 to 70. And they're coming in, maybe at 30, 31. So, those are, as a clinician who is working with their nutrition, encourage them to eat foods like sardines and some of the foods that are very high in vitamin D. And they're not going to be willing to eat those. So then supplementation is really key in my practice as well. There's about 10 products that I use that are really key for optimizing our aging process. Because they support BDNF, they support NRF2, we decrease inflammation, supporting the brain with things like cod liver oil. And for patients, especially aging, I like cod liver oil because it has naturally found vitamin D. It has naturally found vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C, and selenium, and the omega-3. So it's a great bang for the buck. I like to use a multi that is a combination of support for muscle, ligament, tendon, bone, and joint support. I'm a big fan of turmeric. I like a turmeric bound with fenugreek seed because makes it more bioavailable. And fenugreek is really also good for brain, liver, digestion. So we have I like things that create big bang for the buck. I also would say for digestion would be another thing I always add in. As we age, we lose our hydrochloric acid, so we don't digest as well. Or patients that are saying, I don't have a taste for meat, that means they don't have the digestive enzymes there. So I'll use a digestive enzyme with hydrochloric acid. And that's really the 4 things I do. And then everything on top of that is all to promote the optimal aging.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying a lot of those gaps that a lot of people have kind of in the foods. I think that's really important to address. And I know we talked a lot about nutrition and exercise. And I guess if someone comes in and they're just looking to improve their health span, are there any couple specifics or pieces of advice you would give them other than nutrition and exercise, or anything that you think people should start working on earlier, or just even keeping in mind or focusing on?
I would say definitely reducing foods that are inflammatory to the body, especially sugar. Increasing their fish oils. If they're not eating fish, they need to take some type of fish oil that, has been proven to reduce amyloid plaquing in the brain as we age. So the younger you start, the better. And starting exercise, I mean, wherever you are and you start, awesome. You can't go wrong. And, get a trainer, a personal trainer, find a buddy to work with, and that way you have some support along the way and you don't get hurt. But I have 80-year-olds that come into my office and say, I feel pretty good, but I want to live well. I want to have there's a health span and a lifespan. So, there are people that live to be 100 years old, but they're sitting in the wheelchair and drooling on themselves. But then you have patients that are 100 years old who are active and, just fulfilled human beings because they can help with the family, or they can, teach a class, or they can paint or whatever. And to me, that's really living and optimizing that health span.
Inspiring, really inspiring. I think that makes such a difference. And just the fact that you can help influence how people are living and make them live healthier and happier for longer is so important. So I think a lot of people can get a lot out of our conversation today. And I guess just as a final note, I know you just had so much success in your career with running your practices and your cycling achievements and your speaking and teaching, but are there any other goals or aspirations that you have and kind of what's on the horizon for you?
Well, every January 1st, we sit down with a notepad. I've done this it'll be 20, probably 21, 22 years now. And I have three pages. I write, a things page, financial page, and personal page. So I have a personal page. And so I just sit down and we time it. My partner and I we each do a set. I time it and we just write. And all the things in my personal, like I want to speak Spanish fluently and all these kind of things, I just list them, and all our financial stuff, and then all the things that I want. Noticing that as I've gotten older, my thing list gets so much shorter. There's not much I really want. I've got everything I need. So then I go through that. So I'll be doing that process again. I don't really have anything. I mean, I have my senior nationals next year, and I just I filled my board with all my teaching dates for that year, and just to be an optimal human being and make a difference in the world and create health spans for everybody.
I love that. I think that's such a great idea, and what a great way to kind of get your outlook for the upcoming year and get focused and get your goals outlined. So wonderful. I love that. Anything else that you want to touch on or leave us with, or any final piece of advice for optimal aging, just for either healthcare practitioners or their patients?
For healthcare practitioners, really practicing what you preach is really super important. Our patients look up to us. And it's funny because I have a list on my website called Dr. B's favorite things. And it's because patients say, well, what do you do? And it's like, I wear a certain running shoe, but that does not mean it's the running shoe that you're going to wear. But I have all the things that I use that have made my life easy in my busy world of preparing food or whatever. Sheets that I use, socks that I wear that I just really like. And I think that's really important for practitioners to be able to have that information, because in chiropractic, in functional medicine or functional health, whatever you want to call that, they're looking for us. And when they find us, they see us online before they've even met us. They know more about us than we know about us. But by the time they come in the office, they've researched. And they're attracted to us because of what we have to offer. And they see what we have and they want that. They don't know really what that is, but really it's about that optimal health. And doctors being consistent with their nutrition, it's got to be the keys, the nutrition, it's got to be the exercise, it's got to be mindset, it's got to be mindfulness, meditation, prayer, whatever, great gratitude list, all those things are really key for just putting the whole package together. And I think when you're looking at the big picture, if patients see that you have that, it's easier for you to give that to them. And for patients,